Good to see you again on our channel. In a male-dominated industry, Bonnie Raitt has spent decades gaining respect by being dignified rather than dramatic. To everyone's surprise, nevertheless, she made her career debut today. Bonnie spared no details. Names were brought up. 6 musicians that have eluded her, caused friction, or whom she secretly despises. She had to battle twice as hard to be heard, not because of petty competitiveness, but because of betrayal and arrogance. Speculation has no place on this list. It all comes down to the truth. Bonnie Raitt sings it in every heartbreaking song. And behind each of these names is a narrative she has been reluctant to share until now. Whenever she hears that name on an old playlist, it gives her the willies. Eric Clapton is at the top of her list, and she still gets the willies whenever she hears his name on old playlists. Although he was at one point regarded as a fellow musician and perhaps even a blues soulmate, Clapton soon became the first major letdown. Bonnie looked up to him in the 17th century for his rough edge, phrasing, and playing. Unbridled and bright, he was like fire on a fretboard. However, a chillier reality lay underneath the tale and the licks. In private, he did more than disregard her. He downplayed her importance. Second tier was his opinion, and he made sure she was aware of it. Unwanted sounds. Not a guitar god, just a woman strumming a guitar. In interviews, he spoke over her. During performances, she interrupted people and ignored their comments as though they were unimportant. A fleeting act of casual brutality lingered with her forever. She seemed too nice to be blues, he informed a mutual acquaintance. Not only was it demeaning, but it also erased, as if anguish had to be audible to be genuine, or that it could only exist in a man's body for it to be significant. Those were not the last words. Every room they shared was marked by Clapton's attitude. Bonnie, who always entered with an air of elegance, would exit with a wounded but unbroken sense of dignity. Additionally, she gradually ceased to appear completely, motivated by desire rather than dread. Their last conversation was more than 20 years ago, and Bonnie will see that it never happens again. Because some legends are better left unplayed and some walls aren't worth scaling. She was underappreciated by more than just Clapton. Even more animosity followed the introduction of a new moniker, as they had begun as partners. John Mayer is the next artist she couldn't resist adding to the list, particularly following a botched attempt at friendship. Bonnie became interested in Mayer when he joined the blues scene. His talent shone through in his polished, incisive manner and the way he phrased things that made people take notice. She perceived promise, perhaps even a future leader for the field. We should do it for ourselves so that we can stay engaged, develop, and advance. Shaking Shakes by Los Lobos is a good example of how to feel when you compose a new song. A hand was therefore offered by her. Guidance was extended by her. Rather than that, she received an ego lesson. It became clear that the mayor was haughty and condescending. He pretended that the stage was his domain and that all others were mere visitors. He appeared to care more about being worshipped than about being genuine. When Bonnie persuaded him to perform with her at a festival concert, she got a close look at it. A hijacking occurred at what was supposed to be a shared time. He seizes the spotlight, plays solo after solo, disregards her cues to end it, and then silently disappears as the audience applauds the band's unity. Thank you, but no. Receipt not received. He informed Rolling Stone the following morning that the set was tedious. That went beyond just disregard. That was treachery. He pounced on her opening a door and then banged it shut. He never received another invitation after that. Professionalism wasn't the only thing that mattered to Bonnie. It centered on grace. Virtue is being able to discern when to speak up and when to keep quiet. On top of that, Meyer paid no attention. The pain of disappointment became more distant after that. Those that are forever damaged. After meeting him in person, Don Henley, whom she had previously admired, became a disappointment. Slim outfits, slimmer language. It was as if Henley possessed the crowds and the individuals within them. He strutted around like a boss. While he was with the Eagles, Bonnie admired his work. Why wouldn't she? The lyrics, the harmonies, and the icy dispassion. However, when they were not on stage, that distancing became even more icy. A couple of their late 80s charity performances were co-headlining. Bonnie arrived prepared to work with others. Henley was prepared to take charge. During rehearsals, he reportedly leaned in with a half grin and told her, "You should smile more on stage." He also smirked when she tried to suggest musical ideas and interrupted her mid-sentence. "It makes you softer." Without moving, Bonnie was paralyzed. Reason being that she was taken aback. Even though she had heard similar comments from someone she had formerly regarded as a peer, this time she was positive that he would never have spoken such a thing to Springsteen, Petty, or Clapton. The words weren't the only thing. The condescending tone in his remarks and the way he ignored her were the red flags. There was nuance, but the pain was more intense than yelling. A quiet dismissal like that reverberates. Leaving that tour, she felt hurt in unseen ways, and the memory remained with her like a splinter, not fatal, but impossible to erase. The subsequent moniker was even more hurtful than Henley's since he was being used to her rather than treated with respect. A new kind of wound, one caused by manipulation and betrayal, came with the subsequent one. Nobody but Ted Nugent was that. In the early 1990s, they met on a charity tour. The event organizers had assured Bonnie that it would be a nonpartisan musical performance that would go beyond party lines. Hoping and feeling passionate, she signed on. Unfortunately, she wandered into a circus. Nugent had taken over the stage and transformed his entire performance into an angry tirade. Weapons, governmental control, individual crusades. I didn't hear music. You could only hear background noise. Used as a weapon, and Bonnie, who was standing backstage, felt her principles turned into a billboard for an ideology she didn't support. She was taken aback, deceived, and sucked into the propaganda machine. She subtly but firmly left after 2 concerts. However, Nugent made sure it didn't stop there. In interviews, he made fun of her, said she was overly sensitive, and claimed she lacked the toughness to deal with mainstream America. It went beyond mere contempt. Erase was the term. He made her seem to be weak because she put her morals ahead of her comfort. However, Bonnie remained solid. She would never turn around. For her, the guitar has always served more as a protective barrier than a musical tool. Standing next to someone whose voice attempted to stifle hers was not worth any stage or platform. After that, a person who kept to themselves arrived. A silent underminer whose icy demeanor lingered with her. He was none other than Van Morrison. His early records were beloved by Bonnie. His voice, she remarked once, was like dusk, warm and golden and a touch haunting. On quiet evenings when she was alone, she would play his CDs and let the music waft around the room like incense. Contrast this with the man behind the music, a tale unto himself. In London, they were scheduled to do a collaborative show. Bonnie entered with admiration and optimism, but Morrison remained silent the entire time. Nothing at all, not even a look. He ignored her, communicated abruptly through staff, and flat out refused to share a sound check. Subsequently, he informed her manager that she would be fined for the opening performance, seemingly to further incriminate her. As if her years of experience, accolades, and expertise were for naught, Bonnie remained silent. Her verbal retaliation was non-existent. Then she strode onto the stage that night and rocked the house. With a rumble, her guitar sounded alive. She surprised him with a standing ovation as her voice soars, satisfying the crowd's hunger for authenticity. At a later time, she stood by and watched Morrison play. There was no electricity, but his set was tight and professional. It was already decided by the audience. Bonnie gained knowledge that evening. It takes quiet cruelty to inflict pain. Even the most subtle rejection can reverberate for quite some time. Finally, Kid Rock's name lingered like a terrible aftertaste that she never quite recovered from. Ability was never a factor. The subject was principles. Sharing a stage without ever being acknowledged was the central theme. In 2005, Bonnie was fully aware of what she was getting into when they shared a bill at a summer event. Even so, it frightened her. Her request for a private dressing room was made well before the concert began. Not out of vanity, but respect for his dignity. She had witnessed the kind of enthusiasm he exuded behind the scenes. The sexist remarks, the haughtiness fueled by cheap alcohol and a sense of entitlement, the pomposity in his barking instructions at the workforce, and his treatment of women as objects rather than people. He carried himself with the brash self-assurance of someone who believed his reputation permitted him to be brutal. Then he leaned over a promoter and scowled after seeing her perform and seeing her provide a soul-bearing crowd silencer set. Are her expressions always that solemn? No flinching from her. She wasted no time responding. She left with all of her equipment and has never played with him again in the same lineup. It wasn't just about one man. Thus, that show remains the most discouraging event of her touring career. It pertained to all that he stood for. Even with all her power, Bonnie knew that remaining silent would be allowing that world to triumph. A world where swagger crushes respect and where loudness drowns out grace. Despite her ever-present chastity, Bonnie Raitt recalls the muck. Conflicts like these leave visible wounds. Every name is associated with a time when she was bullied, her value cast into doubt, and her talent disregarded. These are the wounds that the standing ovations cover up. Smiling more, talking less, and staying in her lane were still requests made of her, even after she had Grammys and critical praise resonating down the years. However, Bonnie was never one to follow the rules. With her guitar for company and her determination on the other, she forged her own path. She has had enough of being silent, of smiling when told to, and of acting as though respecting someone means ignoring the people who harmed her on her path. She didn't merely talk today. She named with conviction and intensity. Rather than to sow discord, she wishes to stake out her truth. Simply said, the truth has always spoken louder than any spotlight in Bonnie's life. And in a society where praise is frequently more valuable than honesty, she opted for the latter, the one quality that has always served her well. It was for the sake of calculation, not vengeance, that she named them. The choice to remain silent was never an option for her, whether on stage or in life. Truth remains more important than praise in Bonnie Raitt's universe.